Okay, this is basically where I'm up to with my Arduino Taipan game port. It's turned out to be a lot trickier than I thought. So the original idea was to port the Taipan game, which was an original Apple II game, to run on an Arduino. Unfortunately, the Arduino is a little bit small to be able to manage this, and basically the project's got bigger and bigger as I try to solve all the problems to actually get this running. I'm not all the way there yet, I'm getting pretty close. I may end up getting stumped, but this is basically where I'm at now. The game itself, the logic for the game, is running on the first Arduino board here. The game has quite a few strings in it, and there isn't enough memory on the Arduino to actually store all the strings and run the game. So I had to add a flash memory, which is talking to this first Arduino via I2C. And that stores all the different strings that I require. So I basically have a big table, and as I need to output strings, I grab them from the table and send them to the output unit. For input, I have a numeric keypad, which I've modified slightly. I changed the keys around a little bit. This is hooked up actually via an analog input rather than through digital inputs. There's basically a resistor ladder there that sends a different value to the analog input depending on which key is pressed. And I use that keypad for entering digits as well as letters. The display is actually handled by the second Arduino board, which is running the TV out library. That library basically allows you to plug the Arduino into a normal TV through the normal video signal, and what I'm using is this tiny little LCD screen to output the signal to. At the moment, the display unit is working and the code's all functional. What I've actually got is some test code running on the first Arduino that will exercise the output board. So if we connect up the serial, the two boards talk to each other via a serial port, and the TV out library actually has its own implementation of the serial library because the TV out interferes with the existing serial library. I also had to implement my own command structure. So the first Arduino sends commands to the second one, which then processes them to display things on the screen. I also added in some hardware flow control, which is just a simple busy flag, so that the display unit, which is quite slow, can say, hey, don't send me anything, I'm busy processing. I've got this little LED in the middle here which kind of indicates when it's busy. So if we reset this now, it should start running through its test routine. And all this does is exercises the display unit just to make sure all its functions and things are working correctly. We reset that. It's a little bit hard to see on this phone, but you can get the idea that it is working. It turns out to be a real balancing act because you're so restricted with space and memory. The tricky thing on the Arduino is you don't just have program memory, you have two sorts of memory. You've got the memory that's being used while the program's running, plus you have the memory that the program itself is stored in. So you have to balance both of those. I've had to also balance how large the serial buffer can be on the output device, because the TV out library actually uses quite a bit of memory itself. So depending on how large you make the screen, what resolution you use, this affects how much memory you've got. So if you make the screen resolution larger, you have to make your serial buffers smaller, which means you can only send it shorter commands. If I'm sending it shorter commands, it means I need to send more commands, which uses up more memory on the program side that's sending them. So trying to get the balance right is quite difficult. I do actually have the game itself programmed and logically completely working. The game could be played just using serial output. What I'm doing at the moment is now replacing the standard serial outputs with my special command outputs to actually get the output to display on the screen. I'm running right at the maximum of the memory on the first Arduino, so I'm less than 1,000 bytes free now, so I'm not even sure if this is going to be possible, but we'll see. I might be able to figure out ways to cut down my memory use so I can actually get it all to fit. But that's basically where I'm at the moment.